What's up, Crowdfunding Nation? This is Salvador Briggman, and welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Dude, I was at a barbecue here in Miami, Florida, eating some incredible grub, some amazing food. I was talking with this guy about this recent podcast that I did, which is actually this episode that I'm coming out with today. And he literally could not believe the fact that this individual that I'm about to introduce you to actually raised over $500,000 using an equity crowdfunding platform called Republic. And I think that the reason why it's so hard to believe is that equity crowdfunding is such a new thing, but so many people are literally, it's almost like the gold rush. Like so many people are getting in on this sucker. I see people raising money every single week using equity crowdfunding and platforms like WeFunder, Republic, Seed Invest, Start Engine, all these incredible platforms that are out there, seeing people raise funds. There's also a lot of consolidation as well, which is happening among these platforms, which is very exciting to see also. So one of the cool things though about today's guest, not only are you going to discover how they're able to do a $590K plus raise for more than 800 investors, but you're also going to discover kind of a seasoned entrepreneur's approach to launching and growing a company. We actually had on two guests, two people from today's company that I talked with, and they were able to so far build this company into over $1 million per year in revenue when it comes to their potential, when it comes to the amount of income that they're generating from this. And not only that, but their projections are going to grow a heck of a lot more in the coming years. And this person shares a lot of great insights when it comes to being a startup founder, being an entrepreneur, being a creator. So if you are in the audience and you're thinking big, you don't just want to do maybe a small business, but you really want to launch something massive that has scale. Maybe someday sell your company. Maybe someday do an IPO. If you want to get investors for your company, today's podcast episode is going to clue you in on exactly what you need to know in order to hit it big with an equity crowdfunding campaign. So that being said, I got two great resources I want to share with you before we start today's podcast. The first is actually a free resource, and it's for people out there that want to learn more about equity crowdfunding. So this is something that you want to explore, consider doing. If you want to raise funds or capital and get investors for your company, listen up, because this is the way to go. Go and check out my free course at crowdcrux.com/equity course. That link is crowdcrux.com/equity course. That link will take you there. Just enter your name and email, and you'll start getting warmed up to equity crowdfunding, regulation crowdfunding, things you need to know to actually raise money from investors at crowdcrux.com/equity course. The other link that I want to share with you, they're doing this promo on Audible where you can actually get a free copy of the book I'm about to mention. All you got to do is show up and get a free 30-day trial of Audible. So that's something where if you're interested, you can learn and listen to audiobooks. I love listening to audiobooks. I love podcasts. I love to learn and download information in my head. I'm huge into self-improvement, because at the end of the day, whether you're an individual, whether you're a team founder, you're leading a team of people, like in my case, you have a team that works with me, you're really, at the end of the day, all of your vision, all of your capacity is kind of capped at you, your potential, your abilities, your skills, your temperament, your risks that you're willing to take, and those gutsy decisions that you're willing to make as a CEO. And I think that self-improvement is so incredibly underrated. It's one of the things that every single person should be waking up early and should be working on themselves, whether that's learning a new skill, learning about strategies which can move you forward in life, whether that's even just working on your fitness or your health so you can actually show up at work at a more powerful level. If you want to learn more about this, I really think that Audible is a great deal. So go and check out this book. If you get a free 30-day trial of Audible, you can also get a free copy of Equity Crowdfunding Explained at the link crowdcrux.com/equity audio. The link is crowdcrux.com/equity audio. Again, that link is crowdcrux.com/equity audio. Okay, let's dive into today's interview and let's discover how LEXI, an IoT platform as a service, was able to raise over $500K from some incredible investors, go after a massive market, and also already get to the $1 million mark when it comes to the revenue. And it's coming up right after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we're speaking with creators who are behind a massive six-figure campaign that's already attracted over 800 investors, more than 500,000, which has been raised for LEXI, an Internet of Things platform as a service, comprehensive, ecosystem agnostic, and edge to cloud experience. And we're lucky enough to have two members of their team here today. We got Scott and John. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Salvador.
And John, welcome also.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
So maybe we can get started with both of you introducing yourselves and bite size what you do at the company, and we can go from there. So let's start with Scott. It'd be great if you could take that intro.
Sure. My name is Scott Cahill. I am one of three co-founders here at LEXI, as well as a CEO. We founded LEXI almost 6.5 years ago now. We were originally a consumer smart lighting company. And then about 4 years ago, we pivoted to being an enterprise IoT platform. So that's where you find us today. And, we're just starting to run up the score on the scoreboard. We did we did 600,000 in revenue in 2021, 2 million in 2022, and we're forecasting 7.5 million in 2023.
Very exciting, very exciting. And John, when it comes to your role at the company, you could start there and you can introduce yourself sort of bite-sized manner.
Thank you, Salvador. I've been with LEXI for about 2 years as their COO. I joined because of the interoperable history or kind of drive that they have for the Internet of Things instead of having standalone islands of technology that you have to manage. And that goes really well with my background. I've in the past been chair and chair emeritus for the Zigbee Alliance, now the CSA. I also sit as the vice chair for the Z-Wave Alliance, and I've headed up a number of organizations, large companies, where we have increased sales significantly from an overseas company that we brought into the U.S. And I've done quite a bit of time. I did almost 20 years with Kroger as their R&D one of their R&D leaders, where we created our own technology. And you can still see that in their stores today. So this is why I came to LEXI, because it is just oozing with all this wonderful technology and smart people.
Love it. So maybe we can just start off with introducing the audience a bit to what LEXI does and some of the benefits there, and then we can get more into some things you've learned from doing this campaign. So my first question for Scott, how does this stand out? We hear a lot of Internet of Things, we hear a lot about technology these days. How does LEXI stand out as a player in its space?
Well, it's important to know that we serve enterprise customers. So our customers are companies that are, and there's two brackets, B2B to C and then B2B to E. So in the B2B to C segment, it's retailers, it's telcos, it's hardware device manufacturers that sell to consumers, and they want to have a smart home offering. So when that's the case, right, there's a lot you need to bring to the table in order to be in market. So you need a mobile app. You need the actual smart devices, and then you need a cloud, an IoT cloud behind that does device registration, device telemetry, roles-based access control, fleet management, customer service, or as a few of the bits of functionality that we offer. And then the other segment is B2B to E. That's pretty broad. We have a variety of different customers. So we were on the phone earlier today with a Scandinavian insurance company, and they want to provide an insurance app that it covers home inventory, which is both smart devices, non-smart devices, claims processing, risk mitigation, appraisal, and then flood management and notifications, integration with the fire department, same with fire and smoke, as well as security, right? So similarly, they need all of that technology.
Yeah, and I can imagine there's a lot of demand for that, and from what it seems like, it's also growing, right? It's international in that way. So you guys, like you said, you started off 600K or thereabouts, got to 2 million, so it's been growing. When did the conversation of maybe doing a campaign for this and allowing people to invest, how did that conversation start? I'll ask John that question. How did that conversation start internally when it came to doing a raise like this?
The conversation started probably 12 months ago, or from that time frame, that Scott had been out doing a lot of seed fundraising with friends, family, talking to institutions and VCs, and we have some great investors from the friends and family aspect. The challenge was with venture capitalists that really are looking for one solution, which is software as a service. They just want to talk about software, and we're not just a software company. You're very similar to Apple. Apple does hardware. Gee, go figure. But they're also a very large software company, and they're doing really well. So we decided to look into other avenues, which was ultimately the crowdfunding space. Because you've got to have something to run the software on. We have a really great platform for that, and that gets you in the door. So trying to reach an audience that understands that it's not just an app you run on your phone and it does something. It is an infrastructure that has to be deployed, has to be managed and controlled by software that ultimately the user, the consumer, is taking care of. So we decided to reach into this space.
As head of operations, did you see this with skepticism at all? A lot of the times when I hear people talk about regulation crowdfunding or Republic or WeFunder, they're a little bit skeptical at first. What was your initial thought behind it?
Yeah, definitely some skeptic kind of back in the back of the head, but ultimately when we thought through it, we're reaching a different audience. So the folks that were involved with the crypto space, they like to see these type of networks. We were focusing on Helium and Laura at the time. So this is something that we had not done in the past, so a little anxious about that. But as we got into the process, we learned quite a bit. Some things that we weren't expecting, some things that we weren't warned about to take a look at. But ultimately, once we got through the process, we did very well, as you had noted early on.
So Scott, you obviously are more so in charge of the raising money kind of component, right? When it comes to the company, how would you compare this to other ways of raising capital, like VC funding or the angel investing route, which you were going after initially? How did this compare in your experience?
Well, I'll tell you this, it's a lot of work. From start to finish, it is going to consume, if somebody's considering embarking down this path, it takes a lot of time. Republic has a lot of setup requirements. There's SEC requirements. And in the case of Republic, as opposed to WeFunder, you got to get that stuff done up front, like your Form C. And then what we learned, and I think what was the secret to our success, is a lot of communication with the Republic audience. And so we have, we had a person who was almost full time on that, and we created our own media campaign for Republic, and we communicated constantly with our audience. The other thing that we did was we set up Q&A sessions with myself and John and anyone who wanted to ask us questions. But as it compares to, going back to your real question, VC and angel, it's harder because it takes a lot more time and it comes in smaller bits. So VC would be a great path, but as John noted, for us, having spent decades in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of focus on enterprise software as a service. A lot of funds actually have that in their charter, and LPs invest on the basis that they will only do software, and in some cases only do enterprise SaaS, and we are not that. And then as it comes to angels, you're going to get bigger chunks, but like anything else, they're going to be harder to come by.
So when people started to actually invest in the company, what were some of the reasons behind that? Was it they understood your business strategy? Or did they maybe want to make an impact? What do you feel like were some of the reasons why people were taking action?
Well, I think that it falls into two categories. There were those that understood what we were doing, and they were investing because they understood the value proposition to our end customer, the enterprise. And then there were those who really actually began to trust us because of the amount of communication that we provided. You get a ton of questions that prospective investors ask. And in some cases, they're probing. They just want to see how you respond. And the feedback that we've gotten from our investors, from Republic, is that we were quick to respond. We gave very comprehensive answers, and we were very transparent. And we're not trying to sugarcoat it to anybody. And that's been a business philosophy of mine for years, and it definitely paid off. And I think also, quite honestly, John and some of the other executives, they're globally acknowledged IoT experts. And so, the fact that they're at LEXI, says something,
Speaks
but also
volumes.
the answers that we had to some fairly robust or difficult technical questions, we were able to answer, I would say quite satisfactory.
Awesome. So John, when you launch this campaign, it's so much work. You guys are coordinating behind the scenes. You obviously have a lot of experience in this industry. What did it feel like maybe like the second week after you went live with this campaign? What was kind of going through your head? What did it feel like?
I think the response is, oh my gosh, what have we done? Because you put a lot of work in, and it does cost money to do this process. And I don't think folks really understand that, and all the audits and things that you have to do in advance, get your marketing set up and your communication plan, and as Scott said, a dedicated resource to manage this.
Yeah.
You start the campaign off and you see this very slow takeoff, and it's kind of like, wow, if we don't lift off soon, we've actually lost money. In essence, we've thrown money down the drain. But over time, because we did the communication and we started to hit that minimum mark with Republic, and they began to do a lot of the marketing or advertising that we're here, that we started to see that pick up. And then as we rolled forward, we kind of saw this yo-yo effect. There was periods where we would see a lot of investment come in, and then it was very quiet and it would roll back up. And that's kind of where we felt, is it time to end the campaign, or do we keep going? And we did make a decision to end the campaign. And I think because of the good history that we had on Republic, we saw this great uplift towards the end of that process, and as the date approached, because I think it drove that desire, that fear of missing out from folks to say, I need to get in. And what I really liked about the kind of this crowdfunding aspect is you can get someone from as low as $100 to be part of this, and they feel part of it, and they'll communicate with you online to say, I'm really excited, and I'm here to be part of something big. And you don't necessarily get that when you're talking to the big institutional investors. They just, they're looking for a return, and it's almost exciting and fun to do that with these folks that have now invested with us with Republic.
I can imagine too.
Salvador, I want to add on something John said, because I think it's important for the audience to understand. So if Republic will tell you that their average campaign size is $500,000, and I think that is unlikely. I think that is, actually, let me put it this way. I bet that's true, but it's not the median campaign size, right? So because they've got some, it's not a normal distribution curve on how these campaigns, work. There's a long tail where you've got some campaigns that will raise $5 million or $1.5 million. And those are few and far between. So the median campaign size and the mean campaign size are totally different. So people's expectations, they need to set their expectations properly going into it. And I think there's this idea that it's like set it and forget it. I put it out there, and then it either succeeds or fails. There are certain ideas that will really resonate well on Republic or WeFunder. They tend to be consumer focused, but the others, you got to do a lot of lifting, and you have to engage with the audience. And we got, I think, like $200,000. We raised $200,000 in the last 2 or 3 weeks, so a third of the capital, came
That's
in
huge.
the last. Yeah, and we did, we were told to expect like 10 to at most 15 to 20%, and we got a lot more than that. And we also timed a lot of our PR around that, as well as like the Q&A sessions that John and I did. We timed it around creating momentum and, sort of not gaming the system, but leveraging our understanding of how people behave to create a lot of enthusiasm at the very end.
Well, when you mention that word PR, right? So I tend to think of like press releases and journalist outreach. Are you using it in that context, or do you mean like social media marketing and those kinds of things?
Well, we did two things. So one is press releases, and we hired a PR firm to work with us during our campaign, and so we would do actual press releases, and then we would reach out to the press to get uptake. But the other thing that we aggressively utilized is media alerts. So not actually on the wire press releases, but media alerts, and we use that to great effect within Republic, where we would alert customers, not customers, but investors and followers about recent successes, customer wins, BD wins, new functionality, roadmap items. So we had a plan where we would have at least two outreaches every week.
If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist, and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist, fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. So kind of another question here. So basically, you ran this campaign. You now have like 800 plus people that are your investors, and they're rooting for you, and you have all of this funding now to put towards new initiatives. John, when it comes to your role here, what is this funding going to allow you to do when it comes to the company? You guys going to be investing in new software, new people working there. What are you going to be doing with these funds?
What we'd like to put the funds towards is obviously resources, because it is human capital that drives what we're doing. And the other aspect of it is, since we're starting out as a hardware platform that runs the software, we have to produce our gateways. And for those that have been paying attention recently, the cost of procurement of whether it's microchips or just tooling and other components within the bill of material, that has skyrocketed. So, we have found a great manufacturer overseas that I worked with at Kroger. They're a great company, and they've partnered with us to go ahead and procure as much of the product that we need for production in advance. But, a lot of it is, I feel bad for a lot of these smaller companies and startups, because some of these chip companies are now looking for 70 to almost 100% deposit on equipment before they go into production. And we were fortunate that I could bring my old partner back in and say, here's what we're doing. They bought into the vision, and they have been supporting us. So we will use funds for manufacturing and continuing to develop and redevelop the software that we have. We are deploying it through the phone systems now, Google Play and the App Store. We're getting good feedback from the customers that we're working with today. So as we get that feedback, we turn it back into our team, our software development team, to make those enhancements and continue those rollouts. And we will probably go through this rapid iteration cycle of development and patching and adding based on the user feedback, so that when we're ready to go into a much larger scale, when we get some of these commercial customers signing agreements with us, as we're about ready to, we'll have a very bulletproof application at that point.
Well, one of the things I think is very unique about this industry is because it's so new, you also have a lot of kind of actors who are in the gray areas. You want to call it scammers or vultures, people that are kind of promising the sky. And from what I understand, you had a point there that you wanted to mention about that I'm just going to ask you about in just a second. But yeah, so for people that are just, getting new to this, is the role of this podcast is to educate people. Do you have any thoughts on that point of that element in the industry? That could be for either of you.
Let me start, and then I want Scott to finish, because he has a very unique story to this. As we became a bit more visible or successful on Republic, and because of the media outreach that we did, we were getting a lot of emails, phone calls, just general contacts from people saying, I want to invest. I represent somebody that, whether it's a family or institution, we want to invest with you. And we started to think, this is great. We're seeing some really good uptick, lots of dollar figures that they're talking about here. And then it turns into one of those, well, if you want us to invest, we need a little bit of startup money. Oh, and we would like you to pay for that in crypto. So we started to figure out and sniff out these scammers really quick. And you need to be careful and very aware of that style, because some of them were really good. Some of them were so good that we almost bid on one. And I think, Scott, do you want to kind of talk about that?
You wanna follow that up there, Scott?
I'm really glad we're talking about this, because I've always wanted to talk to Republic about it, and I never rose up, because they're, quite honestly, getting in touch with Republic is rather challenging. But we actually were approached by a lot of scammers, and there's an entire, I would say, quote unquote, industry of scammers out there who are preying on companies raising money on equity crowdfunding campaigns. And it's the classic scam. I'll give you a large sum of money if you give me a small sum of money. Now, that's not how they phrase it, but it generally goes like this. All right, we really want to invest. And they send you some sort of due diligence document, and they have a website, and it tells you about their investment firm. And we had them come from London, from Singapore, from Tel Aviv, from Luxembourg, and I think one or two other locations, right? And so it was always, okay, we're going to give you $5 million, and all you have to do is buy this insurance. So in one case, it was insurance. In another case, it was a bond. And in another case, and I learned this the hard way. So the first one that approached us was this group. They had a company in Sweden who was front running for them and finding them investments, quote unquote. And then I got introduced to this guy in Luxembourg. And so then we had a call, and we had a video call, and the video call lasted very briefly, which was, I thought, that's kind of weird. And then he said, okay, we want to give you $7 million. I represent this bank. And he actually had a email from Chiquita Brands. And if you look at Chiquita Brands, they have an entire division that's dedicated to financing startups, interestingly enough, based out of Geneva, which is where this guy says he was from. So he said, can you come meet me in Rome? And he asked me to come there the next week. Before he said he was from Geneva. He would be in Rome the following week, and he was on his way to Singapore to see family. Could I come to Rome the next week? It happened to be Thanksgiving, actually. And I was like, hey, it's a national holiday here. And he's like, it didn't even register with him. So I flew to Rome. And all along, I kept thinking, there's something wrong with this. This is too easy. This can't be real. This can't be real. But I was like, I can't pass this up. This guy says he's going to give us $7 million. So I get there. He actually has a driver pick me up at the airport in the evening. And I go to my hotel. And then I meet him for lunch. So the guy shows up and meets me for lunch. And he quickly launches into, what do I know about crypto? And I was like, crypto? This has nothing to do with IoT. And then he proceeds to tell me that we had already struck the deal. The deal terms was that we were going to pay them 1% interest on this loan, which I thought, man, that's really low. It's just, once again, seems too good to be true. And then he's like, well, we want you to put the interest in a crypto wallet. And I was like, okay, now this
sounds sketchy.
Is a scam.
Yeah,
this is a scam, And then it became, and then he was supposed to meet me later that evening, and there were clues along the way. As I said to John, like I said, okay, let's meet. Why don't we meet later on this evening? I was really trying to figure this out, and he said, yeah, I'll meet you later. I said, what time? He's like 6 or 7. I thought, that's not how meetings work. You don't meet 6 or 7, right? You meet at 6 or 7. but not the entire hour in between. And he didn't care what time, and he didn't really care when. And I said to myself, the reason you don't care is you have no plans of showing up. And so I set a time to meet him at my hotel at 7, and he never showed up. And then later in the evening, I finally got him on the phone, and we could only communicate over WhatsApp. And he's like, well, I was on the phone with the CFO of this organization, and they want I told them that you said that you're going to pay the interest out of the proceeds of the loan. And I thought to myself, that's weird. I never said that. And then he said, and so they want you to put the money up first in the Bitcoin wallet. I said, that's how the scam works right there. I don't know how they're going to get access to that wallet, but this is it.
That's insane, man. And the fact you flew to Rome, right?
And I flew all the way to Rome.
Hopefully got some good pizza at least, right?
I had an enjoyable time in Rome, other than the fact that I was there for like 4 days over a national holiday. And it's like this weird feeling because you're like, I'm here because I got scammed. And I almost lost $100,000 of my company's money.
Well, thank you so much.
Subsequent to that, we had a bunch of other companies approach us with a similar basic idea, which is you buy this, insurance from us, or this bond, or whatever the case may be. Or another one was you prepay for our due diligence. And at a certain point, I just played along with a lot of these things just to figure out how it worked and how far they would take it. And some of them are really good. They have good websites. They know what they're talking about, but
you've been in the industry a while too. So, I mean, you've been able to spot this, but even getting into that point, right? Imagine someone who doesn't have that experience, right?
Well, and they prey. The thing is, if you think about it, they prey on people who are on an equity. So here's how it works. You're on an equity crowdfunding campaign. So you need money for your company, and they promise you a large sum of money, much more than you could raise on the equity crowdfunding campaign. So you really want it. You're like, man, if I could just get that $7 million, all the things I could do, because you're not going to raise $7 million on Republic. And so you want it so bad you can taste it. And they know that, and they prey on that, and they lead you along, and they're damn good at it. I'm sure this works and they fleece a bunch of companies and put them out of business.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Like, really appreciate it. The transparency is incredible. And I think you're also going to help a lot of people getting the word out there about this. And not enough people are educating or sharing important information like this just to keep the industry good, right? To keep the industry full of good actors. So really appreciate that. We're coming to the end of the interview here. So first of all, I'll have like one or two more questions for you, but where can people go to learn more about your company, about future raises? Where can they go to learn more?
Well, you can visit our website at lexi.tech. And then if you're interested in investing, you can reach out to us at our contact form on the website, or just contact at lexi.tech and tell us you heard about us on this podcast and that you're interested in investing, and we can talk about what we're doing in our current round. We're doing one more pre-seed investment right now as a result of we've closed a number of significantly large customers in the last 30 days. And so we're going to raise another $3.5 million before we go raise a Series A in early 2024.
Got it. And I'll make sure to include those links in the show notes. So I got two more questions for you guys. So the first question is, for someone who's just getting started and they're going to be launching a campaign, they got a startup. Do you have any advice in terms of the number one thing they should be focused on or they should do in order to be successful when it comes to equity crowdfunding? And I'll open that up for either of you.
Well, I would say, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I would, and Scott, you can finish the thought here, but first thing they need to know is you need to have cash in the bank. You have to have enough runway to survive, as it were, the campaign, and understand that you also have to pay for the audits and analysis and filing your Form Cs and all of the other things that will burn time before you actually launch. So you've got to have that runway in place. And the second advice is stay focused. There's a lot of folks that want to kind of do the whole thing, kitchen sink, everything gets thrown into it. It's like you're really good at what you do. Stay focused on that and actually, finish it. Folks might want to come in and say, add this to your product or add this service because we think it's neat. We'll help, get that kicked off. Don't do it. Stay focused and deliver on what you promise.
I would add to what John said, which is, so when it comes to equity crowdfunding, on Republic in particular, it's going to be a 3 or 4 month process before you launch, and it's going to cost you at least $20,000. So you should be aware of that. Republic is also, the SEC is going to mandate that you have 6 months of runway in the bank. All right, when you start the campaign, there's this notion of rolling closes. Okay, that Republic will allow you to take capital out as you roll along. Every time you do that, you are going to have to certify that you have an additional 6 months of runway in front of you. That was not something they told us. When we first signed up, they said you have to have 6 months of runway when you launch, not at every point you want to do a rolling close. And we ran a 6 month campaign. So even at the 5 months in, we had to certify that we had another 6 months of capital, and we had to go raise that, make sure we had that capital in the bank. As well, in order to meet that certification requirement. So, and manage the hell out of it.
Yeah, very, very, very useful information. Good tips on both sides. My final question is for people that are kind of, trying to really live out that dream of being a startup founder or an entrepreneur or a business owner. There's so much obstacles and so much adversity we have to go through to be successful. Do you have a final quote or a word of encouragement or advice from a mentor that you would like to share? And we can end on that note. And we'll start with John, and we can go to Scott, and we can end that way.
So I was fairly new to the whole kind of startup process until I met Scott. I've always had the backing of a large corporation and deep pockets, as it were, for budgeting. And, we were allowed to go and create subsidiaries or stand up regional offices. And we never were really concerned about, the funding aspect. When I got into the true, the technical startup world, it was a bit of an eye-opener for me, because what you see on TV or read about or what people talk about is there's no real overnight success. It's several years. As Scott mentioned, we're now into our 6th, coming up on 7 years. And I've always heard you're not really a success until you hit that 7th year. And those are the stories that most people talk about from a startup perspective. And because you're not going to have cash thrown at you from investors, you are living, edge to edge, and you've got to make sure that you've got cash to pay for all of your business people, all of your resources. If you've got real estate you have to deal with, you're paying rent and insurance and all these other things, that it's just like trying to run a family budget where your budget's twice as much as you're bringing in, and it makes you a little anxious and nervous. So we're always, at least within our organization, we're very, very cost conscientious, and that's why we have distributed our development, and we're working with world-class people that I know from a manufacturing and development perspective, so that we don't make mistakes and don't lose money from that perspective.
Got it. So be careful with your budget, be mindful of who you're working with, and make sure to stay lean, right? So Scott, final question for you. We can end on this note, either a final quote that you like, a word of encouragement, or some advice that someone has given you along the way.
Yeah, so I have a quote. I'm going to say that at the end, but if you've never been an entrepreneur before, I've been an entrepreneur all my life. It's all I've ever wanted to do. I've failed many times. Most people just think about, and I've been an entrepreneur or started companies with people who want to be an entrepreneur, but all they think about is the upside. So they want all the upside with none of the downside, and there is a lot of downside. I've literally spent, we've since December through now, without going into details why, I have worked every single day, 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day, every day during the week, and between 4 and 8 hours each day on the weekend, right? Are you willing to do that? Can your life support that? Will your wife support that, right? And then I'll leave you one final quote, which I have lived by all my life. So Calvin Coolidge has a quote that says, and to summarize, persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. So you have to be really persevere in order to succeed.
Well said. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. I'll make sure to link up everything in the show notes and look forward to your next campaign or how your product develops.
Thank you, Salvador.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name, again, is Salvador Briggman, and man, I am a crowdfunding nut. I love crowdfunding, and I've been in this industry since 2012, covering the ins and outs of how to be successful with a campaign, bringing on worldwide guests, people literally from around the world being successful in many different categories with many different types of platforms. And, equity crowdfunding is definitely one of those things that's been growing so much recently, and I am so excited about that. I've been helping people already raise thousands and thousands of dollars using equity crowdfunding, also working on a coaching basis as well as an agency basis, helping them launch campaigns using our powerful team to get this up and running and deliver rivers of funding to the campaign. It's one of the coolest things that's out there. And for anyone who really is willing or interested in exploring this, I do think that this is the time to do it, because there's always going to be more competition in the future. You think about Kickstarter's heydays, right? There were years where it was so freaking easy to launch a campaign and everyone was doing it. It's just incredible. One of those incredible periods like the 20s, right? Where everyone is just seeing easy success, and it got more competitive over the years, but still one of the great platforms that's out there. I think that we're seeing the same heyday when it comes to equity crowdfunding platforms like Republic, like WeFunder, like Start Engine, the biggies that are out there. And if you really want to talk with an expert, if you really want to dial into what you got to do to be successful with this, if you want to revise your entire strategy, go through that, even figure out, is this a good fit for your company or not? If you're already kind of hell-bent on this and you're ready to go, what do you need to do in terms of getting your ducks in a row to really hit this big, to smash through your goal, to raise as much possible throughout this period, throughout this journey that you're going on as a startup founder? And this is something that you want to talk about, go and book an individual one-on-one coaching call with me. The link, if you want to check this out, you can go and fill out this coaching form. We can get an intensive call scheduled ASAP, as well as give you homework items, action items, introduce you to resources, introduce you to other people, see if we can help you, and if not, introduce you to some others in the industry. This is really one of the best investments which you can make to really kind of set the ship going in the right direction. So go and check this out. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching. I'll include that also in the show notes. But if you've been listening, you've been enjoying some of my episodes, first of all, obviously go and check out some other ones, man. Really one of the great things about podcasts is you can just continue to listen to this when you're running, when you're on the way to work, if you're doing something, you're on the subway, right? Even if you're cleaning the house, you can just kind of be listening and learning at the same time in the background. So go and listen to some other episodes. But if you are a seasoned listener, if you listen to a couple of these, you've been binge listening, please leave a positive rating and review on iTunes so that other people know that this is worth their time. This is worth that investment of learning, understanding, really working to upgrade themselves, upgrade your knowledge, your skill set, so that way you can go out there, you can achieve your dreams, you can impact the world in a big way, and hopefully someday we also have you back on this show as one of the success stories. Thank you so much, man. My name is Sal, and I will see you next time.